You recognize this guitar. You recognize these voices.
Saying I love you.
But in 1991, this song put Extreme on top of the world.
More than words is all you have.
But what almost nobody knows is that it was, at the same time, the band's greatest glory and its worst nightmare. Behind the image of romantic balladeers, there was an ultra-aggressive funk metal band that stole the show at the Freddie Mercury Tribute. But that eventually imploded because of clashes with record labels, exhaustion, and an immature decision that silenced the group for more than a decade. How did one of the greatest guitarists in history end up on Rihanna's stage? And why did the lead singer accept the most dangerous job in rock by replacing a legend in Van Halen? You can find the greatest stories in the world of music here on Suggest. Today, you will understand why Extreme is much more than two guys sitting on a stool. If you like real rock and roll stories, unfiltered, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications, because this saga is, at the very least, extreme. Boston, mid-1980s. If you turned on the radio or hung around the city's colleges, there was only one sound, the so-called college rock. Bands like Pixies and Lemonheads had taken over the scene. Their style was planned sloppiness, worn-out jeans, basic t-shirts, and abstract, almost intellectual lyrics. This is where Extreme comes in, but not the way you might imagine. They were outsiders even in the alternative scene. While the local trend was to look like ordinary people, Gary and Nuno showed up with big hair, leather pants, and an ambition that went far beyond the small clubs. They were the offspring of legends like Queen and Aerosmith, living in a city that, at the time, looked down on technical virtuosity. They didn't just want to play, they wanted the top. The band was born on an ordinary night in 1985. The owner of a club in Boston invited a young guitar prodigy, Nuno Bettencourt, to come in after closing time. Inside, he ran into singer Gary Cherone. What brought the two together was a conversation about Queen. They were such devoted fans of Freddie Mercury and Brian May that they started competing to see who knew more facts about the band. The chemistry was so strong that they didn't even need to hear each other play to know, we have to start a band. At that time, Gary already had a band called The Dream, where he played with drummer Paul Geary. When the four of them joined forces, they needed a name. The solution came from a clever wordplay with the name of Gary's band. Since they were the ex-members of The Dream, the name became X-Dream, which eventually evolved into Extreme. That choice reflected the fierce energy and technique they were about to unleash. But to understand the sound, you have to know who these four guys were. Gary Cherone, born into a Catholic family in Massachusetts, almost pursued a career in sports, but his passion for music took over. Inspired by names like Steven Tyler and Freddie Mercury, he developed a unique stage style, athletic, theatrical, and with a powerful voice. Nuno Bettencourt came from Portugal to the United States when he was just 4 years old. The youngest of 9 siblings, he took his first steps in music with his brother Luis. He gave up sports and school to practice guitar for hours every day. The result was a style that mixes the aggressiveness of rock with a unique percussive groove. Pat Badger, a Boston native, was the perfect partner for Nuno's wild guitar ideas. In Extreme, the bass didn't just accompany. Pat's lines were iconic, and he also delivered backing vocals that added the extra punch that became the band's trademark. Paul Geary, a Massachusetts native, had been playing with Gary Cherone since their days in The Dream. He was the one who provided the solid foundation that allowed the band to grow and conquer Boston's local clubs before finally signing with a major record label. After knocking on several doors in Los Angeles and New York, Extreme's luck finally changed. A&M Records decided to take a chance on them. To celebrate, they did something unusual. They signed a contract live on a radio station, announcing to everyone that their career was about to take off. But reality hit them hard. The label shelved their first album for a year. Speaking to Classic Rock, Nuno said, "We start recording the album and we don't like the way it sounds and the record company's not happy with it. They tell us they're going to hold off on it because we missed all those deadlines." We went into this depression. Released in 1989, the album showed that they had the talent, with strong melodies such as Kid Ego and Play With Me. Extreme was disappointed, but not defeated. While the first album was gathering dust on the label's shelf, Nuno made a decision. Instead of complaining, he would write. When the first album was finally released, the second was already 90% finished. Their mindset changed. They thought, since nobody knows us yet, let's make the sound we really want. It was during this phase that they embraced the so-called funk metal, a heavy sound with a lot of groove, following in the footsteps of bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers. And in 1990, the album Extreme 2 Porno Graffiti was born. That was the moment they stopped being underdogs and took the center stage. In the United Kingdom, the song Get the Funk Out became a club hit. To get a sense of their technical level, when Nuno met Brian May, the first thing Brian asked was, "Who writes a riff like that?" Extreme was at the peak of its technical confidence, blending rock, funk, and even jazz. But what no one expected was that the simplest song on the album would change everything forever. The story of More Than Words is really a battle between the band and record label executives. When Extreme presented the acoustic ballad, the response was blunt. This will never work. There's no bass, no drums. It will destroy the band's rock image. Nuno and Gary refused to back down and even threatened to stop promoting the album if the song was not released. The label gave in and released the track only in a few small cities, expecting it to fail. But the song took off. The black and white video on MTV revealed an authenticity the audience had been craving. In June 1991, Extreme reached #1 on the Billboard charts. More Than Words brought fame and money, but also a huge problem. The world began to see Extreme as romantic balladeers. Nuno even told Classic Rock that if he earned $1 for every person who told him they got married or got pregnant to the sound of that song, he would be richer than Bill Gates. Thousands of people bought the album expecting soft songs and instead found an aggressive metal record full of social commentary and complex guitar solos. Gary remembers that it all felt like a whirlwind. They went from empty clubs to sold-out arenas, but they faced a dilemma. The audience seemed interested in only one song. Nuno Bettencourt did not hide his frustration at seeing his virtuosity eclipsed by an acoustic ballad. They needed a historic event to show who they really were, and that opportunity would come in London, on the day the world stopped to honor a legend. Gary Cherone clearly remembers the moment they reached their peak. It was a little after 5 in the afternoon on April 20th, 1992, when Extreme took the stage at Wembley for the Freddie Mercury Tribute Concert. Since they were devoted fans of Queen, they made a masterful move. Instead of focusing only on their own success, they decided to perform an impeccable medley of Queen classics. That day, among giants like Metallica and Guns N' Roses, Extreme stole the show. Gary sums up that feeling well. That was the greatest day of our collective lives. I ended up singing Hammer to Fall with the surviving members of Queen. That show was really the pinnacle. Backstage, the Boston Quartet was living a dream. They crossed paths with Robert Plant, Elton John, and Brian May. The most memorable moment came when Roger Daltrey, lead singer of The Who, confessed that Extreme was his daughter's favorite band. Even with all that fame, Gary says he never let success go to his head. "We never thought we were such a big deal. My mother would have smacked me in the head if I'd started acting like Mr. Rockstar." With the label's approval, they released the album 3 Sides to Every Story in 1992. It was an overly ambitious project, a conceptual record divided into 3 parts, with themes ranging from politics to spirituality, including a full orchestra recorded at the legendary Abbey Road Studios. The album was an artistic success, but too high a commercial risk. The band's cohesion began to crumble in 1994. Paul Gary decided to leave. There was no fight. He simply realized that Nuno's ultra-technical musical direction required a drummer with a different approach. Paul eventually pursued a career as a music manager. To replace him, Mike Mangini came in, a technical powerhouse on the drums. The band became even stronger musically, but that early brotherhood dynamic was no longer the same. The next album, Waiting for the Punchline, 1995, was an attempt to sound rawer and more direct, reacting to the grunge movement. But the music scene of the 1990s spared no one. In 1996, Exhaustion won. Nuno, worn out from the cycle of albums and tours, decided it was time to stop. Instead of suggesting a break, he simply ended the band. Pat Badger compares that moment to a painful breakup. Years later, Nuno looked back with a different perspective. In an interview with the Head to Zen podcast, he said, "I think one of the biggest regrets or mistakes I've made being not mature enough to understand what I was feeling. And I kind of blame our managers a little bit. I blame the accountants. I blame the people who were making money off of us that didn't want to see us take breaks and stop. We were just going and going and going. Tour, album, But I wasn't mature enough. For my head wasn't at the place where I could just take a break. I thought it was either all in or nothing. And things got a little bit hairy with the band instead of just going, you know what, we just need to take a break from each other." Extreme ended there, with a polite handshake, but with the feeling that the rocket had gone up too fast and the crash had been inevitable. When Extreme ended in 1996, Gary Cherone barely had time to process the loss. Almost immediately, he received an invitation for the most dangerous job in rock, replacing Sammy Hagar in Van Halen. Many fans found it unexpected, but Gary had the full support of Nuno, who said, "Of course you're going to get this job. Your whole career has been leading to this." Gary recorded the album Van Halen 3, which critics say is one of the weakest in Van Halen's discography, but he still has good memories of it. Eddie Van Halen was so human and so inviting, and working together was a pure joy. People can think whatever about the record we made, but I'm proud of it, and so was Eddie. While Gary was trying his luck with Van Halen, Nuno explored new directions with solo albums and several new bands. But the big turning point came in 2009, when he accepted the role of touring guitarist for Rihanna. For fans of heavy rock, it was a shock. But for Nuno, it was a technical challenge. About the controversy of a guitar hero playing pop, he jokes, "There's no guitar in most of her songs, so I can do whatever I want to." Was she a fan of Extreme? No, I don't think so. I don't think she was even born. Paul Gary, the drummer, became one of the most powerful managers in the industry, managing bands such as Godsmack. Meanwhile, bassist Pat Badger decided he needed therapy to deal with the stress of rock and roll and opened up a successful alpaca farm in Massachusetts. Ironically, he was the member who did best financially right after the breakup. But neither the quiet life in the countryside nor the new multi-million-dollar projects were enough to erase the history they had built together. In 2007, the band announced its official return. But one question remained. Was it the original lineup? Almost. Gary Cherone, Nuno Bettencourt, and Pat Badger were back. The only absence was drummer Paul Gary, who preferred to continue his successful career as a manager. To replace him, they recruited Kevin Figueiredo, who had already played with Nuno in other projects. In 2008, they released the album Saudades de Rock, a title in Portuguese chosen by Nuno to honor his roots. It was a solid comeback, but the band settled into a slower rhythm. As Nuno was busy touring the world with Rihanna's guitarist, Extreme went on occasional tours, playing their classics and giving fans a dose of nostalgia. But the world truly stopped to pay attention in 2023. After a 15-year hiatus without new material, the band released the album 6. And if anyone thought they would just be a nostalgia act, the single Rise proved otherwise. Nuno's guitar solo was dissected by experts on YouTube, such as Rick Beato, and praised as one of the best of the 21st century. Nuno admitted he did not expect so much noise. When Rise came out, we thought, okay, decent song, decent guitar solo. But the reaction that it got was something else. When Rick Beato posted his video breaking down the solo, And he's saying that Steve Lukather's calling, and his brother is calling, and Phil X is calling, saying, "Have you heard the Nuno solo? It was really surreal for me." Six is a mix of everything they do best, from the aggressive hard rock of Webble to ballads that recall Queen, such as Other Side of the Rainbow. They came back with the mindset of people who still have a lot to achieve. Today, the band remains united on the Thicker Than Blood tour, showing that they are in top form. They have learned to make peace with the past and with the hit More Than Words, understanding that the ballad was the gateway to a much more complex universe. When Nuno looks at the platinum records on the wall, he does not see just numbers, but the victory of an immigrant kid who believed in rock. So, did you enjoy learning about Extreme? Tell me in the comments what your favorite songs by this amazing band are. I'd love to know, and give your comment a heart. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back soon with another great story from the world of music.